So um, I am research coordinator at Campaign Against Arms Trade, which more or less does what it says on the label. Many of you probably familiar with our work. I'm going to sort of talk a bit more about the background of the dynamics of the international arms trade, the current trends in world militarization, and how the different arms industries worldwide are taking advantage of that, and so something about the background to the trend to the militarization of universities. I'll say a little bit about at the end about some of the companies that have most of these research links with universities from the research that we've seen. But first of all, I want to post some reports that we published a couple of years ago, along with Demilitarized Education. They were produced by a copier Jonye, who was then working with education, but now is with Nuclear Information Service. And these were really digging into the details in specific universities of these research partnerships and how they operate, as well as the background why these links between government, industry, and universities have developed, and the way they're justified, what he refers to as the military industrial academic complex. So there was first of all, I'm putting the links in the chat, this report, Weaponizing Universities, which was the main one, research collaborations between UK universities and the military industrial complex. That included case studies of Southampton University, Lancaster University, and Imperial College. Then this was followed up with two further case studies, one on Strathclyde University, and which has particular links with BAE Systems and the military shipbuilding industry in the region, and one on Sheffield University. So I can really would really encourage you to read those reports and case studies. So coming on to the dynamics of the international arms trade, I'm going to share some slides if I can find them. Um, it's always tricky on this computer when you have too many tabs open. Um, no, not this one. Oh dear. Here we are. Here we are. Um, so can you see now a title page saying Dynamics of the International Arms Trade? Right, let's go. So um, the world is rapidly militarizing. This is pretty obvious from the all the wars going on at the moment, the wars in the Middle East, the genocide in Gaza, the war between Russia and Ukraine. Since they invaded Ukraine, Russia has now been fighting in Ukraine for longer than they were fighting Nazi Germany in World War II, which is really quite astonishing. But it's also reflected in the numbers that we see worldwide. So, world military spending reached $2.9 trillion in 2026, according to SIPRI. That's the record since World War II. It may be a record all time. It's hard to say if you were to add up the spending of all the countries fighting in World War II, but it's certainly the highest since then by a long way. Not all of that is arms, of course. That includes, uh, troops' salaries. It includes operations and maintenance and so forth. We don't know how much is specifically on procurement and maintenance of arms, but we do know that in 2024, the data's a year older, the arms sales of the SIPRI top 100 arms companies reached. Sorry, that should be 679 billion, not million. I'll correct that before I circulate them. Um, I'd reckon probably about a quarter to a third of that
We can't see
2.9
your
trillion.
slide. We can't see your
You
slide.
can't see the slides, right? Why is that? You could see the first slide, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes, Sam, we can see the first, we can see the title slide, but not the others as you're skimming through. There we go.
right. Can
That's
you see
fine. Yeah,
this
we
one?
can see
Right.
them now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. It's getting a slide show to actually share successfully in Zoom seems to be tricky. It's you have to do things in exactly the right order, and I can never remember what exactly the right order is. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. Uh, Carrying on, so 2.9 trillion military spending, of which maybe a quarter to a third is on arms. As I say, 679 billion for the top 100 arms companies. In terms of international arms trade, arms transfers, again, it's so lacking in transparency, we don't have a clear figure. It's well over $100 billion. CIPRI have their own bespoke measure of the volume of major conventional weapons transfers, which is only a part of the overall arms trade, up 9.2% from 2016-20 to 2021-25, and at the highest level, all accounting for inflation since the 1980s. And this trend is only continuing. The US military budget has exceeded a trillion, and Trump is requesting 1.5 trillion for 2026 to 27. How they'd actually spend that, no one knows. It would certainly involve an enormous amount of corruption and waste. And NATO countries in Europe and beyond are increasing spending rapidly. They're aiming for this ridiculous figure of 3.5% of GDP by 2035. They've already increased massively over the past 4 years, and they're promising to increase more, which can only come at the expense of social spending, as they're probably going to be reluctant to increase taxes and, of course, international aid. And so, yeah, Europe is on a very concentrated rearmament program in the face of the threat, actual and or perceived, from Russia. And the arms industries themselves are having a huge say, a huge role in guiding the government policies and EU policies on arms procurement, on defense industrial policies, and indeed on arms export controls. They're trying to weaken export controls at an EU level, as the European countries seem generally to have decided that boosting the arms industry as rapidly as possible is the absolute top priority. Who are the major players in the global arms industry and trade? Well, the US is overwhelmingly dominant, obviously. US companies accounted for almost half of the arms sales of the top 100 companies in 2024. And in the arms trade, by CIPRI's measure, they accounted for 42% of major weapons transfers in 2025. The financial share is almost certainly higher, as CIPRI's sort of treats like for like weapon systems as being of equal value by their measure, their trend indicator value. But the Russian and Chinese weapons are a lot cheaper. So, in financial terms, the US is almost certainly a higher share than that. China's clearly the second largest industry, 13% of the top 100. They're growing rapidly. China's been rearming, remilitarizing at a rapid rate. But it has to be said, in line with their economic growth. The share of military expenditure in GDP for China has stayed relatively constant over a long period of time, but that still means rapid growth and technological development. Still, though, only 5.6 of global arms transfers, uh, even by CIPRI's measure, as they're still seen as the lower tech option. They have some particular strong customers like Pakistan, and they're selling more to Africa in particular, who are often out for the cheaper options, which is potentially, very dangerous in its impact. But in terms of the global trade, they're still a relatively small share. Russian arms exports have declined heavily since the Ukraine war. They still have a large industry, though it's not just that the companies are focused on supplying the Russian armed forces, it's they're facing sanctions from the United States. And given Russia's performance in Ukraine, Russian arms are not seen as all that they were cracked up to be by international buyers these days. Meanwhile, European companies are surging. They accounted for 22% of the top 100 in 2024. They're seeing high demand both from Europe and the Middle East and basically everywhere in India, Indonesia, all over the world. There's quite a few other players, relatively new ones. Israel has long been a major player in the global arms trade. They're the seventh largest arms exporter, according to SIPRI, probably higher in financial terms. They're gaining huge revenues both from Israel's wars and from exporting battle-tested weapons around the world. India is a major customer for a long time, but also increasingly European countries are, including the UK, are buying arms from Israel. And the Israeli companies, Elbit, Rafael, Israel Aerospace Industries, are developing increasing close links with European and US arms companies, getting subsidiaries in those countries, including, of course, the UK, where Elbit subsidiaries have been the focus of Palestine actions. And generally, the arms trade is diversifying. South Korea, Turkey, Ukraine in the last few years have become increasingly significant players. The Ukrainian arms industry is at the moment very much focused on supplying Ukraine, of course, but when the war eventually ends, they're likely to become a major export uh, supplier, especially in terms of drones.
Sam, I'm just going to give you a heads up. We have 1 minute left.
1 minute left. So I'll skip over this bit and get on to a bit about how this relates to universities. So Jen Seller's already talked about the government's 2025 strategy, which sees universities as a key part of the military industrial complex, hence the military industrial academic complex. And it's something that both industry is interested in, getting the specialized research skills, and universities are desperate for funding. So they're not putting on too many ethical constraints. I just want to talk about some of the arms companies that in Akopy's reports have most industry links. BAE Systems, the world's fourth largest arms companies in 2024, major supplier of aircraft to Saudi Arabia, but also through the their 15% share of the F-35, an important supplier to Israel, as well as the UK and the US and many others. And they also produce the UK's nuclear submarines, including nuclear weapon submarines. Rolls-Royce is another one that can often be laundered as, well, they're just producing engines. They're not really producing arms. But of course, they're a absolute key part of the UK arms industry, second only to BAE. They produce the engines for all the UK's military aircraft. They produce the nuclear power plants for the nuclear submarines. And their German subsidiary provides engines for Israeli tanks. There's quite a lot of others. So all of these companies are particularly involved in working with universities to develop sort of next generation technologies, the emerging and disruptive technologies the government's so interested in, AI, autonomous weapons and robotics, advanced materials and hypersonic weapons and so forth. So I'll finish there. Sorry to go over and happy to answer any questions.
Thank